Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 94 in the book of Acts. We're in Acts chapter 15. Now, here's the big context. Paul and Barnabas have just been on a 1.5-year first missionary journey. They've returned to their home base, sort of the center of the sending church in the world, which was Antioch, which is in Syria. And they spent about a year, maybe or so, landed after the first missionary journey, before the second missionary journey. Paul is going to write the book of Galatians during that period of time. But there's a conflict, and while they were away, something happened. And so let me read Acts chapter 15. But some men came down from Judea and were teaching the brothers. And this is what they were teaching them. Quote, "Unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved." So basically, this is heresy. Verse 2. And after Paul and Barnabas had no small discussion and debate with them, Paul and Barnabas and some of the others were appointed to go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and the elders about this question. So while they're in Antioch, so this is, I forget, like 100 miles away from, it's probably more, from Jerusalem, they get visitations from some leaders, elders from the Jerusalem church. Now, who were these guys? Well, you have to go to the book of Galatians to find out, because Paul describes this in another story in Galatians chapter 2. Let me read that. There's a couple of mic drops in here, big newses. Number one, but when Cephas came to Antioch, that is, Peter is one of these guys. So Peter is one of the wrong apostles. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face. This is Paul saying this was so serious and a public sin that I had to confront him publicly. I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For before certain men had come from James, that is, come from the Jerusalem church, because James was in charge of the Jerusalem church, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas, this is our second bad apostles, I'm titling this Fixing Two Bad Apostles. Even Barnabas, just got back from a 1.5-year missionary journey, and who is one of my favorite guys even Barnabas is led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, "If you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews?" So one thing you got to understand here that was a surprise to me is think about the timing. So about 10 years earlier, maybe 12 years earlier, maybe 10 or 11 years, the Lord had gave Peter a very special revelation. That is, he collided the worlds of the Jewish world and the Gentile worlds within a man named Cornelius. And the Lord's message was, what God has called clean, don't call common. And physically, he asked them to go down in a company, that is, walk with and eat with Gentiles, and invite them in to be your guests and break down these barriers, and don't call any person unclean. And he did this by a vision, and he had to do with iguanas and reptiles. And don't call any reptile unclean, so you can eat anything, and you can eat with anybody, and you can have fellowship with anybody. Why? Because God does not show partiality, and then he enjoys seeing the Holy Spirit fall on some early Gentiles then, and he eats with them. But then he goes back to Jerusalem, which is his hometown as well, Peter, and he explains to the church and he says, hey, the Holy Spirit is working with the Gentiles. Okay, so that's about 11 years before this. And then God entrusts, the way Paul describes it in Galatians chapter 2, is God entrusts the gospel to the circumcised, that is to the Jews, primarily to Peter, and God entrusts the gospel to the Gentiles, primarily to Paul. So in the 10 years since that this happened, all things have changed. And Peter kind of backslides and he gets this wrong again, and he causes dissension in the church. In fact, he's so far gone that he comes more than 100 miles, goes all the way up to Antioch, and begins to teach wrong doctrine to the Antiochians, which Paul will have no part of. But he's such a good teacher, or such a good persuader, that even Barnabas is deceived in this. So it's an amazing thing. The good news is Paul gets this all corrected. The Gentiles are part of the church by the end of this. But it's a little surprising that Peter is, while the cat's away, the mice will play. Why Paul has gone off the map on the first missionary journey. Peter kind of backslides into this wrong theology about separation of the Gentiles. He was right in 30 AD, but by 49 AD, he was wrong again and had been influenced by this circumcision party, which still existed. All right, so just a couple of teaching points. That there's some dissension and conflict in the church. If there's conflict in your church, you're in good company. This is the church is always correcting itself back to the original good gospel. Number two, even big leaders, Barnabas and Peter, were led astray. And then just be careful of your influence. So Peter teaches with his words and teaches with his behavior. That is, his tongue and his table act as a witness to him and expresses his view of God. I'm so encouraged that all this get fixed, and the two bad apostles, that is Barnabas and Peter, get fixed with this public rebuke, and let's steel our souls to conduct our conduct in step with the truth of the gospel. Thanks for listening to this great fight.